Yes.
But here we are.
Welcome to the Book Club for Movies. It is Thursday, January 7th, 2021.
Right? You may have noticed we were not on the air yesterday. Because there
No,
were
we weren't.
far
There were
more pressing issues.
kind of some other things going on. Like I binge watched House of Cards yesterday. That's what it felt like.
The documentary? No.
No.
It was a dark day yesterday.
Yeah.
And it just didn't, and there's a siren going by right as I say that. That is eerily appropriate for the kind of day that we all had yesterday's. It just didn't feel like yesterday was the day to try to forget what was going on in the world for 30 minutes, because it was all happening at that moment, and I was glued to the news, making sure people were okay. Like, I have friends that work in Washington, and luckily most of them were working from home, so they weren't in harm's way.
Good.
So I mean, it was I drank a whole can of wine last night, Crystal. Yes, it was that kind of night. I think we ended up eating junk food and playing Mario Kart at one point because we were so overwhelmed, and I'm like, we need tea. Can someone make some tea? And we had tea. We got through it. What's going to happen is going to happen in the aftermath, and hopefully the right things happen, and I'll say no more.
Yeah, and we just decided to we had thought about picking an Angela Bassett movie. Well, first of all, Strange Days, our original movie, is nowhere to be found on the internet anymore. It's gone.
It's crazy. Not only that, like, you tried to rent it as a disc on your Netflix. You still have your DVD Netflix account.
Yeah, it wasn't even available there.
And it was said currently unavailable. I went to look for a DVD of it. It was out of print. I swear to God, when we came up with this calendar, it was on Tubi at the time. And I was like, great. It's free. Nobody has to pay to rent it. It's in the original aspect ratio. It was directed by Catherine Bigelow. Now Oscar-winning director Catherine Bigelow. Like, it's a movie made in the early 90s that is really about, like, the Y2K, like a sci-fi adventure flick about, like, a disturbed reality, and that it's like New Year's at, like, year 2000. It's like all of this stuff that she, like, her finger was on the pulse. She knew what was going to happen. She picked the right work to adapt, and it's a really, really interesting film, but cannot be found anywhere online anymore.
Nope.
And so it's like, I still have a DVD of it, which I did not realize was valuable, but apparently is, because it's very hard to find. So we did not end up doing our Angela Bassett Day.
Yeah, we had switched the movie thinking we were still going to do a show yesterday. And then things happened in our country. And we're going to move Angela Bassett to next month. Given that next month is, among other things, Black History Month, we were already planning on featuring pretty much all Black actors and actresses and directors. So she'll just fit perfectly in there, and she really deserves to have a whole day about her. We were just gonna let's just still watch the movie. It's like, no, we still need to talk about her because she's amazing.
We still need to really talk about her. So we'll just continue our discussion on the movie we watched for Tuesday, and then lead into today's choice. That movie on Tuesday really was like a balm, a salve that my soul kind of needed. Like, in retrospect, I'm so glad that I had that experience before all the horror played out yesterday, because it was like, it's such a beautiful, it's like in every single moment. Like, it seemed like at first I was like, oh, this is a 2-hour and 20-minute movie. There's no camera movement. Will people be able to keep up with this? And I thought I had not seen it. I actually had seen it, but I saw it a long time ago.
And I was the opposite. It turns out that I hadn't seen this, and I thought I had.
Oh my goodness. And so I had this reaction at the time, like, oh, everyone says this is great, so this is a great movie. And of course, I related to the family dynamics, because I also from an Asian family, and we have very similar types of, there's a different level of devotion to your family that's expected. It's almost like a spiritual requirement to be like a decent human being. In a way, there's a hierarchy that you just obey. Like you're just raised in that environment. So for me, I totally understood where this family and where this drama had diverged, like where this family had diverged from the traditions, you know, that in some ways, you know, traditions in regarding family are, I think, very important. And I have like, you know, I don't know how many other families are as closely knit as Indian families in a way, or other Asian families. Like we're really close. We share everything. Like, and I even have titles for my older siblings. Like I don't call them by their first names. I have titles that I call them because they are elder. They are shown this respect. So there's this hierarchy of respect. So I totally understand the foundations of this story in a very intimate way. And so any divergence from that level of respect that you know you're supposed to give to your family, and that it was like, it just like was like a dagger in the heart every time these parents were denied love and attention by their children. It hurts so bad to watch it because, you know, and of course they ram home why it's important to cherish that time that you have whenever you have it, because part of the story is the mother dies.
Yeah.
And everyone had their last chance to have a lovely moment with her, and they just kept passing their parents off to someone else because they didn't have time, or something came up and they couldn't do what they planned with them. And these are like small things. You think they're small things until you lose someone and you realize how important every one of those small things was. And all those chances that you threw away that you had to get more time with this person that you loved. So all of that, like, it really, really hit home, because I still remember the night that it made me remember the night my dad died. And I mean, he died overnight, and I didn't discover till I was at work the next day. Because police actually came to my work. I thought they found a joint in my car, but it was to tell me my dad was dead. That's the world we live in. I'm like, wow, this is way worse. But I remember in that moment, like the night before, my dad had this habit of always waiting up for me, no matter what time I got home, because I lived there for a while. He wanted me near him. I took care of him a lot of the time, and he wanted me around all the time. So he would wait up, no matter how late it was, he would wait up in his recliner. He wouldn't go to his bed until he'd seen my face. It's like somehow that was like, okay, now I can go to bed. I know he's home. I know he's okay. I got to see him again. And when he got older, it started to feel like maybe he didn't know if he was going to wake up, and he really just wanted to make sure he saw me before he went to sleep. And that last night he had waited up, and I had made a decision not to, I had gone to a company holiday party, and I was hanging out with friends after. I just had this horrible car accident where my car burst into flames on the freeway while I was driving it that week. It was like a weird week, but I was like, I'm just going to go home. It's been late. I've been driving around. Enough, so I went home, not as late as I usually do, and he was waiting up, and we got to talk, and we had this really wonderful conversation. He was talking about like, we just decorated the tree tonight and planning all this trip for the family. I want us all to go to India together, the whole family. He's like making all these plans. We got to say I love you to each other, and he died in his sleep overnight. But I got that moment. I didn't throw away that. I didn't know that would be my last moment. You always think these lively people, they kept saying, she's so lively. She was so lively. It's hard to imagine. That is like exactly what everybody said about my dad, what I said about my dad. But I got that moment, and I've never forgotten that I got that like perfect goodbye that so many people do not get. And so like every little choice, and Ozu like focuses so, it's so steadfast and so laser focused on these tiny little details, these tiny gestures, the little things people say to each other, the way they look at each other. But also every frame is so rich with detail. Mm-hmm. The camera doesn't move, but it doesn't need to. There is so much story in every frame.
I think there was one shot.
Yes, and it's very important that one time the camera moves is the one time one of those kids shows those parents some respect, spends time with them, and they take them out. It's the only time those parents see Tokyo is when that one person takes them out. And that's the one time the camera moves in this movie. The one moment of pure joy they got to have with one of those children. And it wasn't even, the child they were related to by blood. It was the widow of one of their other deceased children.
Yeah.
And it has that amazing line where the mother's at this girl's house and she's, oh, I'm so lucky I get to sleep on my dead son's bed.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, that cuts. And you hear her crying herself to sleep and you see the daughter-in-law like crying silently laying next to her in the like it's just like every detail is perfection.
Yeah, in this
movie
there was definitely a lot of like beauty in the simplicity of this. I wouldn't say this is a movie for everyone. You know, if you're the type of person who's like, I want action, don't watch this. But it definitely, yeah, this hit home for me too. Being that like my grandparents, or really my family, we moved in with my grandparents to take care of them. So I almost got too much time with my grandparents.
There's no such thing as too much time, Amy. That's why we're like,
well, yeah, some of
you think that now, but you're glad that you have it, don't
no,
you?
there's definitely. I mean, especially my grandma, my mama. She's I don't regret any of that time with her, and and even then I knew like I better cherish this. Because all of my other cousins, granted that they had spent time with her, they were much older than me and had kind of, in a way, decades of time to spend with her, but they lived across the country. It's like I'm the one that's actually here helping to take care of her and just like, taking her to the grocery store, taking her out to lunch. And I think a lot of people forget just how important grandparents are and how much they loved everyone. I mean, my grandpa was not perfect in any means. He's someone that when I talk about spending a little too much time, it's like, yeah, but it's
did, Walter.
And I think there are so many, not just Asian, but I mean, there's so many other cultures too that I feel like really embrace like grandparents and I think of a lot of like Hispanic families and how many generations will live in one house. If anything, I feel like it's Americans where we're like, all right, we're just gonna put you off somewhere.
It's very much a white people thing in general. It was not you, Amy. You are a class above.
Have an exception.
So many.
Yeah.
But it's like, with like Mexico and Hispanic cultures and Indian culture and other South Asian cultures, we all worship our ancestors in some way. We give devotion to them. We remember them after they passed. That is also a part of our culture. Like we don't even let go of our family when they're dead. Like for eternity, we are bound together. Whether your body is buried and your soul is passed on somewhere else, like you are still a part of this family and you're still going to get a plate at the holidays, even if there's no one there to eat it until I get really drunk and hungry and I eat it. But I
like this comment from Andres.
But so you probably like me, like, because like I can tell the way you were with your family, like it's the same. Like we had the same kind of really super tight knit family, and we took them in and loved them when they needed to be taken care of. How did you feel about those grandkids? I wanted to smack those grandkids so bad.
They were definitely like little bratty kids. The person that really got me the most was the daughter. She was so annoying and like ungrateful, and just even things like, her husband's like, oh, I bought these cakes. And she's like, these are too expensive for them. As like, she's eating them. And she's like, they're fine with crackers. And he's like, well, they had crackers yesterday. She's like, well, that's fine. They like them.
And that's the character that
it's too good for your parents.
It's insane, like, and that character is definitely the one that most Western viewers have like the biggest problem with. I don't know about Japanese viewers because I'm not raised in Japan. But that is the character that gets the most response out of people. They're just so upset that she talks about and she treats her parents this way. But she's also, and then you think about it, she's also the one who's like, they haven't been out anywhere. You should take them out. Like, can you take them out? Oh, well, they should go out. Even if she doesn't give up her own time, she's still thinking, well, they came out here to, they haven't even seen the city. Like, she's thinking she's like pragmatic to a fault in a way, because when she gets that telegram and she's the one who's like, should we pack our mourning clothes? Like, I hope we won't need them, but she's thinking ahead because she's a very good businesswoman in a way. And that's just how she thinks. And so when she bursts into tears and she's telling people, you'll need to have these clothes and you should borrow them. Like, she's directing things. Like, there is a genuine love and affection for her mother that is there, and you definitely see it come through. But she's more challenging for people because of those things. But I remember I was upset with her, but I was also really just upset that the parents of those grandkids didn't do anything to correct them. I was like, if I ever spoke or acted that way to my Indian grandmother when she flew from fucking India to come visit us. Granted, these people came from, I mean, it was still a long distance. They talk about the distance all the time between them. Oh, you know, the old people can apparently come and make the long journey, but the young people can't.
No.
Okay. But like the fact, like, I would never have been allowed to speak to or act that way with my grandmother when they came to visit, ever. I would have definitely been punished. I would have been admonished. And luckily, my grandmother, she didn't speak much English. I'm not saying I was lucky that she didn't speak English. I'm saying luckily she didn't speak much English, and she just wanted time with you. And she was content to just say, I love you, and then like stroke your face and hold your hand for like an hour. She just wanted to be with you and feel your presence. And I was like, that is like the least any person could ever ask of you, to show that you love and care for them. And so I very willingly did that. You know, I think after 2 hours, you kind of got a little antsy and wanted to, you know, get up. I was, 10-year-old kid, but I never did that. So I was just like, how are these parents just letting these kids act like this? And they're just like, oh, they're rambunctious. And what are the grandparents supposed to do in that situation? There's, but the worst kid, I think, of all, I think the one who wins the worst kid award in this movie is definitely their youngest. The one who shows up too late to see his mother before she's passed.
Oh yeah,
because he just didn't take the train the night before, and they're all like, he's late, and he lives the closest of all of us, and he's the one who's not here right now. It was just like, oh my god, it understands family so deeply that like it's mind-boggling that anybody could have ever made a movie this intimate. And that score, every time that score started playing. Like that scene where the grandmother is like talking to her grandson. She's like, do you want to be a doctor when you grow up? I don't know if I'll be around to see it when you do. And he doesn't say one word. Doesn't even look at her. I'm like, horrible child.
Yeah. And there were so many things too of just, oh, well, let's send them off to this hotel. They'll like that. It's like, I mean, yes, they haven't been to this resort, even though it ended up being more of like a party hotel.
Yeah.
But it's like they came to see you.
It's time with you that they wanted. They didn't make this.
They honestly, I mean, they're so worried the whole time about like, oh, they're not getting to see Tokyo. It's like they came to yes, they they would like to maybe get out once in a while, but like there were so many grandparents, like they probably would have been content just to sit and hang out with them and do nothing at their house. Like that's why they came there.
They wanted time with you. And I just love how it tells you a lot of these details, these things about their family life without you having to see flashbacks. They introduce characters in ways that just like, you're just not used to that in a movie. Usually when a character is introduced, you get a close-up of the character. You hear their name spoken very clearly with that close-up, and somebody say you're introduced as if that person walked into your home in a way when a character walks into a film. You get some kind of protracted or highlighted introduction, but everybody comes and goes the way they just would in normal life. So that Tatami Mat camera stays in that room as somebody comes in, and the person who plays Noriko, the one who is the widow, and she just judges herself so harshly for not thinking of her dead husband every day after 8 years, and she's that one who's happiest to host these parents and spend time with them. And that actress is like huge star in Japan, like the biggest star in the movie. No close-up of her when she enters the film or the story. It's just her coming through the door, taking off her shoes, coming in the door. And it's just like that. It's typical of the whole movie. Even though he calls this his most melodramatic picture, because there's a couple little moments where he does highlight something specifically emotional, like the grandmother talking to her grandson, kind of thing. But the rest of it is very like that. It's like you don't get these Hollywood treatments of everything. It feels so much more organic and natural. And I just completely got lost in this family's life for these 2 hours and 20 minutes, So I hope a bunch of other people did watch it.
Yeah, and again, this was available on HBO Max, I guess, and of course the Criterion channel, Criterion app. Um, and there's a whole bunch of Yasujiro Ozu's films on there right now, including a lot of supplemental material and all kinds of things. Anything that you would get on a Criterion DVD is on there if it's for that movie. So check it out. This, as we mentioned, or not yesterday, 2 days ago, there's so many critics and filmmakers that absolutely love this movie, have ranked this as one of the best films ever, if not the best. There's some debate with that, I think.
Definitely, for me, one of the very best movies you will ever see. On a really an emotional level and a sense of intimacy and observation of family drama that is just unparalleled.
The Andres stamp of approval right here.
Oh, yay. Good.
Well, we're definitely going to go over, but we didn't do a show yesterday, so sue us. As we mentioned earlier, we've decided going forward with each month, every genre Thursday, we're going to pick one genre for the whole month because we were really just scraping the butter thin on some toast.
We're doing like subgenres of subgenres at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so we focused on true crime documentaries. True crime documentaries are definitely a guilty pleasure for me. I think more and more people have become more interested in them, especially with all of these series that are coming out. It was almost getting kind of hard for us to find some good films. I mean, I can't even tell you, any serial killer documentary series that Netflix has, I have watched it. I'm really looking forward to the Night Stalker one that comes out like next week.
Right? Okay, we're like, maybe we should do like a live stream, like watching the first episode thing or something. This kind of stuff is our jam.
It is, and I have always, it is a guilty pleasure. There is something that is just so fascinating to me about it. Especially just the aspect of crime and murder. Like, I'm not that person. I don't think like these people. So I'm so fascinated with them of like, what makes this person tick? And just, sorry, I'm choking. They're just crazy. It's just so, it's like, this really is true life. And, yeah, and there are so
truth can be stranger than fiction.
Yeah, and like there's so many fictional things that we like that are based on these documentaries and true life stories. And Walter, I wouldn't admit that you're a big serial killer guy. That could be taken out of context, Walter.
Well, I've already been saying it. What do you think is going to happen to me?
Well, with that in mind, we each one of our 4 genre Thursdays this month, we try to pick on a different type of crime. We don't have a serial killer one. We definitely have murder, but we don't have a serial killer thing just because most of the ones we saw that we absolutely love are series.
Or a series.
A film. So we couldn't ask you to just binge watch something in one night, even though we all know that you would.
And we know we could get that done easily. But,
yes. But today's film is Cartel Land. So this came out in 2015. This was nominated for Best Documentary. This lost to Amy, the Amy Winehouse documentary, which I still haven't seen. But I heard it was good. But
the Oscars love to give the award to like music documentaries in the last few years. Remember, we talked about how.
What's it called? 10 feet from stardom? 5 feet?
Yeah, 20 feet from stardom or something. And that beat out The Act of Killing, which is just like one of the great modern masterpieces of documentary filmmaking at huge personal expense to that gay filmmaker living in Indonesia for like 7 years to get that movie made, dealing with people who perpetrated a genocide, to make this like insane level of danger and commitment that he had to go through to make that film, and then he gets to the Oscars and loses to 20 Feet from Stardom. But that's just how it goes. The Oscars are like that. And unfortunately, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't see Amy either, and I love Amy Winehouse, but I'd also read almost everything about her before that I could ever find because I loved her before all that happened. So I wasn't really surprised by any of the things that they were going to say in the documentary. So it was like, okay, whatever. Oh my God, look at this. Andres. Had to censoring must have been, that was a rough one. I'm sorry, buddy. That couldn't have been anything else but every now and then the Oscars does throw in a surprise nominee that you didn't expect them to honor. And that year it was like, oh, this year there was the year of Cartel, and it was like, oh, there's a true crime documentary as an Oscar nominee. Hooray.
This was inspired by or what got this filmmaker interested in pursuing the story was I think he had seen a Rolling Stone article just talking about cartels in Mexico and kind of like a story about both sides of the border. And I think his father had sent him like some other thing too. Oh yeah, but I think he had sent him something about this little town that is shown here in this documentary, this town in Mexico, about these people who were kind of like fighting back against the cartel. And he said, that's it. Like, I have to film this. So this movie is split between, let's see if I can get the exact. So filmmaker Matthew Heineman examines the state of the ongoing drug problem along the U.S.-Mexican border. Half of this takes place in Arizona, where kind of like their own vigilante group, I'm sure more, you can imagine, not getting political, but there are people who are trying to prevent drugs from being smuggled into Mexico. And on the other side of that, they focus on this little southwest town in Mexico and the people in this town. And this town has just been infiltrated by these cartels. And these are just like regular people. And they're the ones that are really affected by cartels. And cartels and anything related to this is always something that has fascinated me as well. Like Narcos is my favorite Netflix show ever. I've seen all of it. And it's something that I think it's so crazy that, how deep they run in Mexico and how it really affects the entire country. And being here in the United States, it's like we're kind of, not me personally, but like we're responsible for a lot of this too, because we buy a lot of the drugs there. It's like we're the market.
It's a business. It's still a capitalist enterprise.
But this movie, I just remember being really blown away by it the first time I saw it. Mostly, I mean, not only was the story so interesting, but one of the standouts in this, just as a documentary, was the cinematography in this. And I think this actually won Best Cinematography for a documentary I want to say at Sundance. It's just, I mean, you're filming a documentary, most things you're filming are like on the fly, and you really feel like you're watching a narrative film, just with how amazing this looks. I was just absolutely blown away by the footage that they have, and like even just like to see what happens in this of like, okay, like they're talking to all these people, and then you find out like some of them are corrupt too, just like the corruption doesn't end. And it's just so real. It's gritty. It's, there are shows like Narcos, which of course are still based on actual events and people. But then you go to things like this, where it's like, okay, this isn't like, I think they hardly ever interview people who are actually in the cartel. They interview the people who are affected by it. Mm-hmm. These families trying to live their lives in this poor little town in Mexico. But it's really good. I'm really excited that we picked this. This used to be on Netflix and they took it off. However, it is on Tubi, which means you can watch it for free. It probably has some ads, but it's free.
And not too many ads. Tubi's not that bad.
Yeah, no excuses. Because, I just thought this was like a side of cartels that we don't really get to see as far as the people that it's actually affected by. It's good. It's really, really good. This has some high profile. I know one of the executive producers is Catherine Bigelow, who, we wanted to do one of her films yesterday, but
I know.
out how that didn't happen. Yeah, but I'm just really excited to watch this.
Well, me too. And we don't have to pay for it today.
Yeah, we don't. But what are some of the things that you like about true crime documentaries in general, Samir?
I'm like you. I'm like just fascinated by the absurdity and like the extremity of human behavior, what it's capable of, how far humanity can stretch to accommodate other less appealing behaviors to some eyes. But I'm also like fascinated by organizations, by sort of surreptitious organizations and how they run. It's really all of those kinds of details. Of course, I also, I'm a big horror movie fan. I love the morbid and the macabre and the gothic. And I love all those, even though I don't dress like it, perhaps, but I do love those things a lot. So any story that also hints at an element that appeals to that demographic will also capture my attention. So, like I said, I've watched like tons of like documentaries on things like Jack the Ripper or, the Atlanta child murderer or, like any of these stories, because they're just I think the more horrific they are, the more fascinated I am to watch them. And when they're real, it's just much worse. So the horror yesterday was really difficult to watch. It wasn't as much fun as watching it in a fictional context. But even maybe there's also a little bit of a comfort in knowing that this extremity was eventually contained in some way. A lot of the times, like, these stories you're watching, like, okay, well, this is done and over with. So I'm not going to deal with Jack the Ripper in my life. There are other horrors that we will have to deal with. Richard Spencer or Richard Speck? Or are they the same person? I can't remember.
Oh, Richard Spector. Oh my God. Phil Spector.
And that's Phil Spector. No, Richard Speck was another
horrifying man.
horrifying human being. But it was discovered later in prison that he had breasts. He had like breast implants and nobody knew until he died.
Phil Spector?
Richard Speck.
Oh.
Richard Speck. A notorious horrible murderer. But a lot of those stories have an end with like people going to prison, or it's long enough time that they're either gone, or it's something that we just know is unsolved, and there's the fascination of the mystery of trying to solve it, like the Zodiac killer. We still want to figure that was still in the news recently. Somebody else decoded those letters. And all these years later, there's like more people think they figured out that code, so there's like all of those kind of elements that make these types of stories fascinating. I am also like a highly sensitive, emotional person, so I'm also incredibly moved by the smallest thing. And so like these kinds of stories, it gives you a nice I also like being informed. Also, I like to know what's going on. So a documentary like this is going to give you a perspective that I think a lot of people need on things. Like I don't glorify drug cartels because I like true crime dramas or documentaries. Like I'm not glorifying the cartel as something that's glamorous and appealing, but I am fascinated by the social system and hierarchy of those kinds of businesses, and the ways in which they affect the culture should definitely be analyzed more than just the dynamics of that family. Like we idolize The Godfather, for instance. I mean, that's a true crime drama, if ever there was one. But we idolize these characters in a way, even though these characters are responsible for a lot of death and destruction and in order to maintain control of communities and other people. And so, but we accept that movie as an entertainment where you like the family. This is not a crime family that you're going to fall in love with in Cartel Land.
No, it's not. Yeah, I mean, I could watch Narcos and absolutely love it and not be like, Pablo Escobar, he was pretty cool. No.
That's funny.
Watching these and realizing that they are horrible people. Andres here said something about how, you take some comfort in knowing that you're not as horrible as some of these people in there. And I do too. I like watching documentaries in general. Just from an acting perspective of, this is where I get to actually, like, these aren't people that I interact with on a daily basis, thank God. And but this is how Walter, so many people, when I first saw you say I know Escobar, I was like, Get out, Walt.
Well, there was a thing in those Firefest documentaries where it was discovered that, because originally Firefest was supposed to happen on an island that was owned by Pablo Escobar, but whoever owned that land now, they were like, okay, well, we'll let you use this, but don't mention anything about Pablo Escobar. And then the first thing they do, they make that crazy, like, amazing ad that they made for the festival. Yeah. The first thing they did was like, on Pablo Escobar's private island. And it's like, everyone's like, oh, it's so cool. And then people are like, my family was killed by Pablo Escobar. I don't really think you should be advertising. So the second they did that, of course, the people on the island are like, okay, you are off the island. Fuck off. You no longer have access to this piece of property for your festival. Good luck to you.
A Fire Festival documentary almost made the cut for our true crime documentary.
It almost did but we chose a different white collar criminal to excoriate next week. But that's an interesting connection to this, because there is this contingent of, like, rebellious teenager who idolizes movies like Scarface. Also, like, burying his head in a mountain of cocaine and say hello to my little friend and all this. So, like, people love that movie passionately because they love this, like, fucked up character, and like, yeah, look at him doing all this horrible shit to people, it's great. And I'm like, well, it's not really great.
I remember when Wolf of Wall Street came out, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. There was a lot of backlash with that, saying like, oh, this is glorifying this lifestyle. I said, like, did we watch the same movie? Or, like, is my moral compass just so, like, dead set on North that I watch this and I'm, it's like, yes, he has money and Margot Robbie, but, like, that's not. He's a bad person.
You're like, that movie does not glorify that. I mean, it shows the excesses of that lifestyle, yes, and it does maybe luxuriate in displaying them for the film, which could be an issue that some people had. Like, well, this is glorifying the possible benefits from this lifestyle. I'm like, yeah, but the movie does also continue after that, and it shows more about the consequences and the prices that you pay in some way. Like, at some point, you're going to pay. Maybe that's why we like these true crime documentaries. We know no matter what happens, even if they don't pay in this life, they're going to pay in another. Like, if you believe in reincarnation, that murder is coming back as, like, a cockroach. They're coming back as something that everybody's going to hate. So we know that they're going to get some kind of retribution in some part of the universe at some point in time. So I don't have to end my night watching a movie like that and being like, oh my God, the life is over. It's terrible. I hate everything. I'm like, no, this is a fucked up, weird story. And you have to appreciate when truth is stranger than fiction, because it truly, truly is. And it's funny that we finally feature documentary as a genre, and we're like, true crime.
Yeah, I think the only time we have actually picked a documentary in all of this was the 13th, when we talked about Ava DuVernay. But documentaries, I mean, I really, really do love watching documentaries. So I'm really glad that we picked this genre for the month. Cartel Land, I really, really hope people enjoy this. Again, this is available on Tubi. Or not to be. Has to be said. It has to be done. Sorry, guys. Tomorrow we are doing our first Cult Classic Friday. My brain
Did you? I was like,
and you broke. We're doing our first Cult Classic Friday for the month. It is Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which I have never seen. It's one of those, I've always known about it, but I've never seen it. I might be tempted to dress up like this character tomorrow because I have blonde wigs. And
do you have that wig?
No, I don't have it. It's not going to flip, but maybe I can improvise. I can improvise something else with it. It definitely does not flip. If you are interested in supporting us, the Book Club for Movies, please check out our Patreon. I put the link in the comments. Tiers start at only $2 a month. We appreciate all the Patreons and other supporters that we do have. Cartel Land again is on Tubi. Join us tomorrow as we talk about Cartel Land, moving on to Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Oh, I can't wait.
German. Hedwig and the Angry
Hedwig.
Hedwig.
I can't stand it when people say Hedwig.
Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Oh, we'll talk about the show tomorrow, Andres. I did get to see the one with what's his name? The cute guy from Glee that was from San Francisco. What was his name? He was just in the Gianni Versace show.
Oh,
Darren Criss.
Yes.
Darren Criss was in a touring production of it, and I saw him in it because I worked at the theater that that show was in. So we got to see him in that show. It looked very nice in the little leather shorts at the end of the play, which is a moment that does not happen in the movie, but we'll get to it tomorrow. But yes, it's a great stage show too. I wish I'd seen Michael C. Hall in it also, but we'll talk about it all tomorrow. Tonight, it's about the Cartel Land.
It is again available on Tubi. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.